Squirrels. The cartel strikes back. It was a dark time in the garden. Although the asparagus had been saved, Imperial squirrel troops have been dispatched into the far reaches of the yard. One gardener stands alone in his moderately epic quest to repel the invaders, reclaim his love of gardening, and grow fresh, healthy food at home. So if you want to keep squirrels out of your garden, stick around, because I found the one thing that is so incredibly stupid it might just work better than anything. You know, one of my earliest memories actually involves a squirrel. When I was 3 years old and we'd visit my grandparents, their neighbor had trained a squirrel to climb up his pants leg, take a peanut out of his shirt pocket, then sit on his shoulder and eat it. It was the coolest thing I had ever seen. But when I became a gardener, an uneasy truce had been struck with the evil squirrel cartel. I had secured sole possession of our vegetable garden, while the squirrels had free reign over the peach tree. But soon the squirrels would escalate the conflict in ways I could never have imagined. I had planted several citrus trees in large containers, but the squirrels had other plans. The morning after I planted them, I saw this. So I put the soil back in, put some hardware cloth on top, and then staked it down. But the next morning, good grief. I again replaced the soil, replaced the hardware cloth, staked it down, and this time I put some large river rock on top. The next morning, only a single river rock had been displaced. I took it as a major victory, but the squirrels became enraged. They marshaled their troops and rapidly advanced into the apple tree, plum, pomegranate, fig, and persimmon trees, but they could not penetrate my pear tree's defenses. I had planted it in the midst of 7-foot-tall rose bushes in my blackberry patch. The blackberry canes were so sharp and abundant that the squirrels wouldn't even try to eat the blackberries. It was time for me to fight back. I tried putting some of those clear clamshell containers that cookies and muffins come in over my apples, but the squirrels knocked a couple off overnight. And it sure seems like the fruit would get awfully hot in those things when the temperature started getting in the hundreds. And they provided just too much of an excuse to purchase every snack in sight in the Costco bakery. I bought some shiny, spinning squirrel deflector things and hung them up in the peach tree, but they disappeared overnight. I tried hanging some old CDs and DVDs in the peach tree, but they also disappeared. But I would soon find out what became of them. Under the iron-fisted rule of their leader, Charlie the Squirrel, the hero of the Plastic Owl affair, the squirrels opened two new and unexpected fronts in the war. It appeared that they hired a public relations firm. Before I knew it, January 21st was declared National Squirrel Appreciation Day. But then they attacked my house and my family. It started late one night when I was getting ready for bed. I heard a light thud on the roof, followed by thumpity 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 thump, thumpity 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 thump, back and forth across my roof. Again and again, the squirrels were launching themselves from the big oak tree that overhangs our roof. These harassing tactics continued for several weeks, but suddenly things went quiet. I mistakenly assumed they had just tired of their efforts. After a few days of silence, I heard a familiar, yet slightly different sound. Thumpity thump, thumpity thump, thumpity thump. The squirrels had breached my roof and were in my attic and were running across the ceiling, hurtling over the ceiling joists. What was really weird was that night, I'm pretty sure I heard the movie Apocalypse Now playing. The missing DVDs. The squirrels were having movie night in my attic. After talking with my dad, I soon realized that we were lucky the squirrels had only advanced as far as our attic.
We were in our home, heard a commotion in the master bathroom, opened the water closet door, saw some plastic pieces on the floor, but I looked up and there was a hole in the vent. Then I heard another commotion and there was a squirrel in the master bathroom. He actually had gotten down the vent, got stuck, chewed his way through the plastic, dropped down into the bathroom right over the toilet, and he was running around. It was a mess.
I'd sure hate to have been in there when that thing dropped in. I called our insurance agent, the roofers, and the pest control guys came out and put some cages in the attic, where they caught nothing. Now, while the new roof was being installed, I hopped in my car to run down to the garden center. About halfway there, my car lost power, but I was able to safely pull off to the side of the road and then had it towed to the dealership, where they discovered that squirrels had chewed through some of the wires in my engine compartment and made a nest in my cold air intake. What a mess. $1,000 later, I was back on the road. The next day, my wife was driving home from work, and just as she pulled into our driveway, her brakes went out.
The brakes are out! Hold on!
I looked underneath of her car and saw a big puddle of brake fluid. So this time I had her car towed to the dealership. They told me there was a recall on the brake lines, so no harm. They repaired the brake lines at no cost, and we were back on the road again. But I still wonder if the squirrels didn't have a paw in that thing. I was now more determined than ever to take the fight to the squirrels. After trying every conventional solution I could find on YouTube and the interwebs, I decided it was time for some unconventional warfare, and I found inspiration from one of those old DVDs that disappeared from the peach tree. My foe, my enemy, is an animal, so it only stands to reason that in order to conquer him,
I have to think like an animal, whenever possible, to look like one.
I gotta get inside this dude's pelt and crawl around for a couple days. I had to rule out the exploding rabbit. I was relatively certain that our homeowners association wouldn't appreciate what I was trying to accomplish. So what scares a squirrel? I had already tried the plastic owl, but that didn't work. Come to think of it, a pair of owls are often out in our backyard. You can hear them hoo-hooing back and forth to each other. They're kind of scary looking, but I've never seen them eat a squirrel before. I guess a hawk is a little bit more scary than an owl. They make plastic hawks, but I've never seen a hawk eat a squirrel. I have seen a hawk in the backyard catch and eat a couple small birds. Maybe I could train one. So I checked Amazon, but the live hawks were out of stock. I wasn't sure if deer are an enemy of the squirrel, but they are big. In that time, I looked over the back fence and saw one 10 feet away glaring at me. That was kind of scary. They make life-size plastic deer for bow hunting practice. But then I remembered one of the DVDs missing from the peach tree was Bambi. I was kind of afraid the squirrels might get an idea from that. We have a fair number of mountain lions around here, and I remember some years back we had a neighbor who actually had a pet mountain lion. It was crazy seeing that guy walk his big cat around the neighborhood. My brother told me a story of the time he was sitting on the patio with that guy and his pet mountain lion. The big cat, in a playful manner, decided to put its mouth, fangs and all, on my brother's leg. Now, my brother naturally became a little concerned about this turn of events, so he looked to the cat's owner for help. The guy looked at him and said, "Well, just pop him upside the head, oh, let go." I just didn't think I had the time, money, or patience to purchase and properly train a mountain lion. But then I remembered something our oldest son suggested to scare deer away: mountain lion urine. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. No, maybe not. One of my viewers commented that human urine works, but I wasn't sure how local law enforcement would react to that. Well, you see, officer, there's these squirrels. Another viewer commented that pine martens like to eat squirrels. I had no idea what a pine marten was, so I Googled it. Good grief, that certainly looks like it could be effective. What could possibly go wrong? I can imagine taking the garbage out late one night and stumbling across one of those things, having its squirrel buffet. So I decided against the pine marten. There's only one time I've ever seen an animal actually catch a squirrel in the backyard. My wife and I just happened to be looking at the back door one day, and we saw a squirrel on one side of the tree and a white cat on the other side of the tree. The cat chased the squirrel around the tree a couple of times, but then rather than running up the tree, the squirrel made the mistake of jumping down to the ground. The cat quickly followed. They both disappeared into the Turk's cap, and a few seconds later, out came the cat with the squirrel in its fangs by the back of the neck. It was like watching one of those National Geographic shows. The spooky old lady who lives across the street must have at least 14 cats. If we could somehow train them to hunt as a pack, I came across something called a bird hawk flying kite crops farm protector bird scarer flying kite. With a name like that, it's got to be good. So I ordered one. I was pretty excited about trying this thing out, but I've never been very good with kites. My dad, on the other hand, had been flying those stunt kites for years. Man, he could really make that thing dance. So I invited him over.
What's this?
It's a bird hawk flying kite crops farm protector bird squirrel scarer flying kite.
And what are we supposed to do with it?
It's a great idea. It'll scare the squirrels away for sure. It'll be fun.
Who's going to fly it?
Well, I thought since Father's Day is coming up, and you're the one who's good with kites.
Remember when you were 3 years old and you thought it was a great idea to train a squirrel to climb up your pant leg, take a peanut out of your shirt pocket, climb up on your shoulder and eat the peanut? Remember that?
Yes, I do. Good point.
Was it a good idea?
Well, that didn't really pan out, so I asked my wife. Honey, I often fondly recall that you were excellent at flying a kite back when you were young. I thought about hiring a lawyer to file a cease and desist letter against the squirrels. By this point, I was even beginning to have squirrel nightmares. Who are you? I didn't think things could get any worse, but I was wrong. I was sadly picking blackberries one dreary morning. Have you ever had something that's just a little bit out of your reach? So you reach a little bit farther, just a little bit farther. Suddenly, I was face down in the blackberries, and I couldn't move. The thorns had a hold of me like Velcro. So the only solution I could come up with was to take my left hand and put it down on top of the blackberries in its thorns, and then take my right hand and grab the blackberries next to me, and then push and pull myself out of there. Man, it hurt almost more getting out than it did just laying there. After taking my shirt off and pulling about 600 blackberry thorns out of me, I washed my wounds and applied a liberal amount of antiseptic. But then I noticed something kind of odd on the back of the shirt. Luckily, being an Eagle Scout, I had earned my fingerprinting merit badge, and I had a few tricks up my sleeve. Now, this technique is really more of an interpretation than hard science, and there's always the chance that whole Rorschach inkblot test thing could come into play. But here's what I came up with. Next, I was able to use what I had learned earning my Wilderness Survival Merit Badge. Let's see. No. Squirrel! Dang it! And then, in that moment, a thought. What could I get that was big, scary, and loud with a whole bunch of erratic movement? Something that was so scary that would freak the squirrels out so badly that they'd never eat another peach. I ran into the house, logged on to Amazon, found what I was looking for, and ordered one. It was genius. It was awesome. I've had it up and running 24/7 for about 3 weeks now, and for the first time in 12 years, I was actually able to pick some peaches. And let me tell you, they were delicious. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. I'm not quite ready to call this thing a slam dunk, absolute sure thing yet. The rest of the peaches won't be ready to harvest for about another week or so, and the squirrels still send scouts continuously, although they've all been scared away so far. But there's still time for the squirrels to launch one last-ditch counter-offensive. But if this thing works, just think of the possibilities. You could use them all around the garden. Shoot, you could even use it for difficult situations at the office.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah.
Or to protect your bathroom. I've got to warn you, though, it does give a slightly different ambiance to your yard. I'm going to let this thing run continuously until the peaches are gone one way or the other. Either I harvest them or the squirrels eat them. Then I'll make another video with my final results. If you want to try one for yourself, I've got a link in the description and pinned in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. Wait a second, don't forget, watch my first squirrel video too.